Hey everybody, welcome to episode 76 of the Masterclass. My name is Cam and I'm joined by Dave yet again. How's it going?
All right, how about you?
You know, honestly, if we're going to speak honestly, Dave, I'm really tired. My body is tired. But
that's what you get for exercising.
Well, hopefully in a lower heart rate. That's the goal. And maybe, a lower weight as well, but I'm not getting my hopes up. But anyways, we're back. And we're recording a few days late. Those of you that are listening to this out of time really probably don't care. But for the regular listeners, we had to reschedule this week because I had an infant CPR class this week at the hospital in preparation for our baby. And one of the interesting things, not to mention the whole life-saving part of it, is that you could kind of tell all the dudes were feeling out. Like, is it okay to make jokes? Do I have to be super serious? Is my wife gonna, shoot me the death look if I make a silly comment? Just trying to feel like, are the teachers super serious? Are they like the first 10 minutes? You could kind of tell the guys are fiddling with the fake babies, trying to behave. I think it's one of those man things. I have to prove to the other guys that I'm here because I want to be, not because my wife made me come, so I'm going to act all cool and loose. When totally our wives all made us come to that class.
Yeah, that's, I'm sure. Never had to do CPR, but I did. Both my children choked at some point, so...
Yeah, and one of the nurses that was teaching the class, he said that, he goes, chances of you having to use CPR, really low. Chances of you having to do the choke stuff, guaranteed. It will happen. And I was like, oh, okay. and so we spent all this time on CPR, and then at the very last 5 minutes, the one thing that I'm guaranteed to have to use. But that was frightening. The whole I was more scared about the choking thing because you hold the kid on their stomach and you beat the middle of their shoulder blades at the heel of your hand. Just this is really violent.
Yes, and that's exactly... I did that to both my girls. I grabbed them, and actually, do you not point them at the ground anymore?
You you have them, so use gravity. So you hit them like this, and then you're supposed to flip them over and pump their chest a few times, and flip them back over and hit their...
Yeah, I remember giving a good whack to both my... And it works. It worked.
Yeah, use gravity to your, advantage there. So... not only are you going to learn about Jesus this episode, you now know how to save a baby. Don't say we never helped you out.
Did you have to find the xiphoid process?
That sounds like a really bad sci-fi novel.
They didn't make you do that?
What? No, I've never even heard that word before.
Maybe that's just stuff on grown-ups. Maybe babies don't have those.
The xiphoid process?
I think that's what it is.
Is that the thing that breaks off?
Yeah, the cartilage and stuff.
Yeah, he called it something. Maybe it was that. He said, you want to make sure that you're pressing up near the nipple line, because in a baby you can break that off, which is just also frightening.
Yes.
So.
Well, and it is xiphoid process. Small... I'm not even going to try to say that. Lower part of the sternum. Made of cartilage. And when you do CPR on adults, particularly old adults, it's disgusting. The ribs really go. It's like that first couple times you're doing the... It's just oh, I'm sorry. So, yeah.
All right, well, that's been this week in medicine. It's not even really medicine. It's this week in weird bodily name. I can't even talk. I'm so tired.
Oh, poor Cam.
Oh, no, not at all. I don't even know what tired is. Talk to me in a month and a
half.
That's true. I want to be able to string together complex thoughts. But anyways, I suppose we should move on from this intro. I don't know.
Our ramblings.
Yes. We're going to finish the parable of the tenants. We started it last episode, and we got up through verse 39, and we're going to do the back half of that same parable today. So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Would you briefly recap what happens in the first half of this?
Sure. Jesus starts off by acknowledging that this is a parable. And he says, tells about a landowner that planted a vineyard. And based on the description, it's a very involved, all the things needed for it to be a successful vineyard are there. There's a tower, there's a wine press, there's a hedge around it for protection. And when the fruit comes in, the landowner sends his servant to get the fruit, the harvest. And so the tenants beat up the multiple servants that he sends to them. And then finally, the landowner decides that he will send his son, and surely they will listen to his son. And they beat him up and kill him. So
Plot twist.
yeah, and it really was, because the disciples and the people who were hearing this did not have the Bible and did not know. Well, they didn't have the New Testament. They did not know what we know now, and that couple of different things there. And I don't know if this is the first time, but it's Jesus basically says, I mean, basically when he makes the parallel of the landowner sending his son, he's making that parallel of I'm the Son of God, and then also the foretelling of his crucifixion, of his death. That's where we left off.
All right. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and read the passage this week.
That would be great.
Mix it up a little bit. The parable continues. When, therefore, the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants? And they said to him, he will put those wretches to a miserable death and let out the vineyard to other tenants who will give him the fruits in their seasons. Jesus said to them, have you never read in the scriptures, the stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone? This was the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people producing its fruits. And the one who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces, and when it falls on anyone, it will crush him. When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard his parables, they perceived that he was talking about them. They're so smart. And although they were seeking to arrest him, they feared the crowds because they held him to be a prophet. So, this is the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes to a rather, not shocking, but I would say rough conclusion for the tenants.
Mm-hmm.
And here's one of the things that Jesus often does in these sorts of parables is that he tells the story, and then he asks the logical question of, well, what would happen to these people? You know, much the same when who was the prophet when David was king? Was it Samuel or Nathan? I think it was Nathan. Well, it was both of them, kind of, right?
Yeah, Samuel was kind of on the front end.
And Nathan was on the back end.
And then...
So is Nathan the one that told the story to David, and David is like, oh my gosh, and then he's like, it is you. In very much that same vein, Jesus asked the question, the Pharisees, because they're super smart, make the logical response, and then turns out you just condemned yourself because you're not as smart as you think you are. You're kind of dumb, actually.
Yes. And I mean, the other thing is there's this element of Jesus knows he's going to die. And it's sort of like, that's not even the bad part of the story. You know, it's like...
Yeah. I hadn't even thought about that.
And I kind of lost train of my thought there, but just ultimately, there's just sense of he knows he's going to die. Really doesn't kind of dwell on that. He kind of almost passes over that, and then there is this second half of, and this is what's going to happen to you, and kind of makes you scratch your head, because it's like, well, they knew that he was talking about them, and they feared him to the point that they did nothing at that time because the crowd saw him as a prophet, and it's like there's this disconnect of they get it but they don't get it.
Well, yeah, and it's false conviction.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Is what it is.
That's true.
Because they feel this way about him, but then they don't have the chutzpah to go through with it because of how they're going to be perceived by the crowd. The crowd holds him in high esteem, so we're going to give in to our ego essentially and save face with the crowd because we need the crowd in order to maintain our position. As the religious leadership and the ones that control, all the stuff that Jesus was rallying against when he flipped the tables and everything like that. And so I find it, and then you add to that the fact that they have this sort of trial in serious air quotes where they sneak up on him while he's praying in a garden. They carry him off, have this, what's the phrase that often gets used for the trial? Like a monkey or an well, okay, if you're listening and you know what I'm talking about, the name of it's like a monkey trial or an elephant trial, but there's like some like descriptor for the I don't remember. Not important, but they hatch this plan that like, okay, we want to arrest him. Later on, we want to kill him, but we don't want to do it when people are around because we want to save face. And so they have this secret trial. They condemn him to death, and they get the crowd all hooped up and, going. And it's just, the whole thing is just really pathetic.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I was trying to get with that whole long thing. It's pathetic when I see people, or when I do it myself, where I have my convictions. I know what I believe, whether it's right or wrong, but then I don't follow through on my convictions because of how I will be perceived. Regardless of whether I'm right or wrong or anything like that, it's a matter of how I will be perceived by the people that I deem are important. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that Jesus gets to in, just the grand scheme of his ministry is constantly reminding us that the only person that really matters in our lives is God, in our relationship with him, in our standing with him, and what he has done for us and what we are in his eyes. And if that relationship is right, as Jesus, came to do, is to make that relationship right, then we should have the freedom to act on our convictions because the only person that matters in judging those convictions is God. Mm-hmm. And that's really hard because, one of the things that gets confirmed in our lives over and over and over again is that the opinions of other people matter. How many friends you have, how many people like your Instagram photo, how many people like the way that you dress, or all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And in a world where we're constantly reminded that the opinions of the important people matter, it's tough to remember sometimes that God's opinion matters more than anything else. And our convictions should be tied to what he deems to be true and right, and not what is popular this month.
Absolutely. Yes.
Forgot to breathe there for a little bit.
Yeah. And that's, it's easy to get focused on the wrong things and get things out of order. And
well, I feel like Satan is not stupid.
No.
He's very clever. And oftentimes his big attack is just taking your focus
and
shifting it like 5 degrees. or causing a little doubt to creep in, or throwing in a little justification. Like even with Adam and Eve, is that what God really said?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because He doesn't want you to be like Him. Just two short little sentences, and the downfall of mankind happened. So it's a combination of Him being very clever and Him understanding that focus and acceptance are very easily manipulated in us, and it's also us being vain, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so often, like, I'm guarded against like the big sins. I don't want to have an affair. I don't want to murder anyone. I don't want to, do anything that I deem to be truly awful. But it's the little stuff where Satan's like, man, if you fudge that, who's gonna know?
Right.
And that's the stuff that God's like, that's what I care about. I mean, obviously He cares about the big ones, obviously, but his care for those small areas of my life is the same as it is for those big ones. Whereas for me, it's like the curve is steep down to like, yeah, it's no one's gonna know if I fudge this area or if I cut the corners. I mean, really, that does matter. That really, really matters, because that shows my true character.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I have this sense of what you're describing to me is sin. For me, is sin management. It's very much the um, I I'm very careful about like what I allow myself to do and not do, and it's like you said, don't do the quote unquote big sins because that would make me look bad, and so those are really easy for me to keep. And the reality is it's like it's impossible for me to do any of that, and it's really about just the sin that's in my life. And um, I, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but I've noticed places where I consistently put myself and my comfort ahead of others. And again, I think a lot of the choices that we make or things that we choose are not in themselves sinful or evil, but when we're choosing them instead of God, or we're choosing them to be the thing that gives us peace, is our stress relief, things like that, when really we should be dependent on God for those things, they do become sinful. And I wasn't planning on doing this, but like um I haven't had alcoholic beverage in a few weeks, and I don't believe I'm an alcoholic. I don't even think I'm remotely close to it. But I was just convicted that when I was stressed out, my way of dealing with stress was to drink a few beers. I wasn't drunk. I didn't, but I know I was doing it because it was the quickest way for me to relax when I was stressed out. And uh I love beer. Like, I genuinely can say that I love beer, and vast majority of the time when I'm drinking beer, my end goal is not to get a buzz. I enjoy the taste. I enjoy much about beer. Um, and I found myself getting to this place where that had changed. I was drinking it because of what it was that it would do for me, and I just was convicted that that was sin for me. I have every intention of drinking beer again sometime. Um, but it had become the thing that I was turning to relieve my stress, when really I should be turning to God to relieve my stress. And the stress that was in my life for that particular period was uh, work related, and I don't even know what the timetable is for me on this. It's just one of those things. So, true confessions from Dave there that I didn't didn't intend to go into, but as I just was thinking about this, I'm like, well, this is what I'm talking about. This is
Mm-hmm.
this is a practical example for me, and I just felt like there was an element of God just going, if I'm important to you, you can give it up. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. So
Yeah, I think that along those lines, it when you said the sin management line, obviously that brings me back to the Divine Conspiracy and Dallas Willard always being smart and right. Must have been hard. But this idea that when we get caught up in that, like to your point, your focus was on the quick relief or the what had been just something that you enjoyed became something else, and it kind of grew into something that you were like, yeah, probably should take a break. And I think for me, I get so caught up in not focusing on my relationship with God, but focusing on how I'm failing Him or trying to ignore what I know is wrong. Like I get so caught up in playing the shell game of like that I don't even think about like not even how it's affecting my relationship with Him, but my relationship with Him doesn't even come up in the how am I going to fix this? Why do I feel this way? Why am I doing this? And so I get so focused on my control over the situation or how I feel like, no, the sin's not controlling me. I'm in charge. Look at me. I'm a big man, that sort of stuff. When my initial thought should be my relationship with God and focusing on that and letting Him either sort it out for me or letting Him say, you need to do this instead of me trying to keep all the plates spinning, you know?
Yep.
And I don't know what that's about for me. I think part of it is probably like, well, if I just don't ever talk to Him, then He can't convict me, which is ridiculous because He doesn't, need a face-to-face meeting to remind me, that I'm a sinner. He has, that Holy Spirit person just always there, just right here. Hey, what you doing, Kim? So yeah, I think my biggest hurdle and something that I want to change is my focus to be on my relationship with God and what that looks like, because frankly that sucks lately. And not necessarily worrying about the issues, but getting back to a place where I feel good about God and our relationship, because then if I feel like I'm at least getting closer to being centered, a little crap, like it's just a little crap, and He's big enough to handle all of it, and I don't have to. Did not think we'd wind up here.
No.
Especially based on this passage. But I mean it makes sense why we're talking about this. Let's jump back into the specific verses though. Maybe that will help us continue to flesh out these thoughts that we're having. He says in verse 42, the stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Okay, so he kind of changes metaphors here real quickly, and then he kind of ties it all up there at the end. So we start out with the vineyard and God being the vineyard owner, Jesus the Son coming to the people that were tending the vineyard. He gets killed, right? We've covered this. But now he turns to a building metaphor. And it seems as if I'm reading this correctly, that the builders are offered a stone to use as the cornerstone of the building. And for whatever reason, the builders decide, no, we want to choose our own cornerstone. Doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with the one they were given, but they decided for whatever reason, we want to build the building on our own cornerstone. So we're going to reject this one. Turns out that that rejected stone has become the cornerstone, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the cornerstone was the first stone laid, and it was what the building was built off of. Correct?
Yes. And there was very much an effort to find a square cornerstone so that
Everything was true off of
everything
that.
was
Yeah.
true off of it. And so, yeah, for them to say, well, we're going to reject this one, I think it just again goes through what we talk about with Jesus when it comes to the chief priests and the Pharisees and the religious people of his day. What he thought was true and square and correct and right is not what they saw. And so I think it's just the same thing again of, really even I think back to what you and I were even talking about of just this worrying about the outward appearance, worrying about what I can do to be a good person, what I can do to be in right standing with God. And the reality is just can't do it. We are just absolutely completely dependent on grace. And I would say that in my journey as a Christian that I always thought, well, grace is the thing that brings you to Jesus. And I'm very much like this, oh my gosh, I so need this every freaking day. And
Yeah, no, it doesn't bring you, it keeps you. Like
yeah.
It is the ultimate medicine for our particular disease.
Yes.
And just as I was reading about the cornerstone and the building and the idea of building you're building off of this one foundational stone, it then brings up the wise man built his house upon the rock, and I think that's how that song goes. I don't know. But yeah, the story where one person built their house on a solid foundation and then one person didn't, and when the storm came they both got hit, and the one that built its house on the solid foundation stood and the one that didn't crumbled. And I often wonder if at some point Jesus thought, how can they not get it yet? Like, I have told this to you so many different ways, I can't even think of another way to tell you. I've used every metaphor, that I can. You have put the logic together yourself and answered the questions correctly, and yet you still will not see the truth. And it's easy for me to point at the Pharisees and be like, you guys are such idiots. How do you not see it? And then I can turn around and do something equally as stupid and never see the hypocrisy or irony that I too am dumb like a Pharisee most of the time. Especially when you consider how well educated I am in this area. Like the shirt fits all too well. But I just thought it was interesting that he switched metaphors here, but it's just an apt, easy to understand metaphor. I gave you the cornerstone to build off of, the perfect cornerstone to build off of, and you thought, nah, I can do it better. Which pretty much I think sums up all the problems with humanity is, no, I can do it better. Even though the person you're talking to is a master architect and you can't even build anything with a Lego set. Like the hubris involved with looking at God and saying, no, I got it, I'm good, is bordering on insane, I say. That's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah.
So then he spells it out for him, as if they don't get it yet. Therefore, I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people producing its fruit. I'm going to take it away from you because clearly you don't understand what you have, and clearly you're not using what I've given you. And I'm going to go give it to someone who's already doing kingdom work. So, essentially, he's saying, you had the opportunity, you squandered it, you are continuing on in the ways of the temple and the law as you see it, while these other people that you condemn, because they don't do it your way, are actually doing things the way they're done in the kingdom of heaven. So I'm going to go give them the cornerstone. You guys have a nice day.
Yeah.
Like, it's the ultimate slam, if you think about it. This is the established priesthood that has the truth memorized, written, copied, over taught all the time. And not only did they miss what they had, but unbeknownst to them, right underneath their probably upturned noses, and are people that are doing it the way that God intended it. And so at once they lose their credibility with God. They lose their credibility with the people, even though that's the very thing they were afraid of, which is why they didn't do anything, because they thought the crowds would turn on them, and they need the crowd's approval so that they can sleep good at night.
Yeah.
And again, I need people's approval so I can sleep good at night. So I'm not like attacking them as I'm better. It's just when you see it spelled out for you, when someone else is the subject matter, it's a lot easier to see the truth. Just like the Pharisees here, talking about some, hypothetical vineyard. Oh, yeah, we can answer the question right. But as soon as it becomes about them, all of a sudden their blinders come back on, and their brains stop working. They go, nope, we're good. I got this. And I don't understand why we're that way. I don't get it.
I wonder what makes us different than the Pharisees. I mean, is it the fact that we go, okay, I acknowledge that I'm a sinner and I'm dependent on His grace, because we behave the same way that they do. And I mean, verse 43 says, "Therefore I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people producing its fruit." So I guess in essence, I'm asking, what is producing its fruit? What does that mean? What does it mean? Because He's saying, I'm taking it away and I'm giving it to the ones producing its fruit.
I would venture a guess as to the fruits of the Spirit would be evident in your life, first of all. Secondarily, I think to produce the fruit of heaven is to bring grace and mercy and forgiveness and reconciliation into the world. In the name of God, of course, not just to be nice. But I think that those are some evident examples that fruit of the kingdom is being produced. I don't think it means that your church is big. I don't think it means that you wrote a best-selling book, or or that you even have a podcast about Jesus. Like, I don't think any of those things are necessarily indicative of producing kingdom fruit. I think it's a much more simple than that.
Because I guess I'm sort of leaning towards this. I'm leaning towards it being this element of us just being dependent on His grace. Like, I don't think there's anything we can do. I mean, I don't. There's. It's not up to us whatsoever. And is it just simply allowing His grace to work in our life? Is it? I mean, because I can't create love, joy, peace, patience. I mean,
yeah, no, I wasn't saying that we create them. I'm saying that if we possess those things, the Holy Spirit has built those into our character. As we have grown in our knowledge of God and our love for Him and all of that, I think if those things are evident in our life, it's proof that God is working there. It's not because I read the Bible so many times that my points in the grace bar went up and I got to level up.
Yes.
It's proof that God is working in me, and then if outwardly I show grace, mercy, forgiveness, reconciliation with enemies, that again is proof of God's work in me and in those people. Which is why I said it doesn't matter if you write a book, it doesn't matter if you have a pod. Like, the outward things that we can do and control, those are not proof that God is at work within us, right? Those are just things that we've done.
Right.
And, for all the world knows, me and you could be two of the worst people on the planet and just have a podcast about Jesus to try and make up for it. You know what I mean? Like, just because we have a podcast doesn't mean that God is necessarily working in our lives. It's just a podcast. Anyone can do it.
Yes. And I think this is where well, I'm going to throw this out there. I don't even think it's about believing the right thing. And this is like kind of the, like, I guess sort of what I'm wrestling with, because I think there's this element within Christians of, if you just believe the right thing, and the right thing to believe is that Jesus is the Son of God. If you just believe that, then you're saved. And well, first I'm going to throw out there James 18 through 20. But some will say, you have faith and I have works. A little bit about what we're talking about here. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that God is one. You believe well. Even the demons believe and shudder. And that's actually verse 19, not verse 20. Demons believe the right thing. They believe that Jesus is the Son of God. They believe that he came to earth and took on human flesh, and they believe all the right things. And I think the Pharisees, to a certain extent, believed the right things. But there was like this disconnect between, and I'm still wrestling with this in my head, so if I'm not making any sense, I apologize.
Yeah, there's a disconnect between what they knew and how they acted.
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
Yeah.
And okay, so brief church history here. I wonder. Oh boy. Okay, I'm going to preface these thoughts with this is stream of conscious thinking. So if I say anything terribly heretical, yeah, please forgive me and let me know. But when the Protestant church started, it started for a lot of reasons. People, the Catholic Church charging money to, make sure that people got into heaven, which is just ludicrous. But I feel like one of the things about Catholicism that is attractive to me is you do things. You go to confessional.
Mm-hmm.
You stand and you kneel. You stand and you kneel. You recite the liturgies. You have the daily prayers and scripture readings. You have the Hail Marys. Like the act of doing those things. I think hopefully the intent was to help us connect what we believe and what we know with how we act.
Mm-hmm.
To make them, to try and physically represent what we believe. Maybe that's why Catholics have crucifixes and Protestants just have crosses. The physical reminder, yeah, Jesus actually died here. This actually happened. This was a real guy beaten and bloodied and crucified. And I, as someone who grew up in a Protestant house, mostly Baptist, everything was theoretical. Sermons, like, I feel like the reason a lot of people that grow up in Protestant churches want like formulaic answers is because they never had anything physical, like the connection between a sermon on Sunday and how I act at work on a Wednesday. You never get taught that stuff. That there's no practical application, if we're going to use a preacher's term. Even though all sermons should be practical and applicable, there was never for me, a physical or practical connection. You just kind of figure it out. And so much of what gets taught is theory, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder if in the Protestant Catholic split, if perhaps maybe we lost something as far as the connection of biblical principles of godly truth and a physical connection to them that helps us remember why we believe what we believe and what we believe. Just a thought. I don't know if that has any credence or whatever, but
I absolutely, I think it does. And I wonder a little bit too if there have been a lot of just difficult times throughout history, and
I feel like that is history. It's just one big difficult
it's just
time.
one just big difficult time. And so, I kind of look at the garbage that's going on in our world today, and it feels to me like our nation is divided, and not just like blue and red. It seems like it's divided. Like there's even divisions amongst Christians, or there's all these divisions, and I wonder what the next generation, what they're going to do. And I guess in a roundabout way, I'm responding to what you're saying is that I hope for my children is that the church, well, this is what pops into my head. The church quits worrying about being relevant. And because
so true.
because gosh, I feel like I'm just vomiting all over, like mental vomit
It's
here.
okay. I've got a poncho on. You're fine.
Because even the word you use, application, isn't really even the same as relevant. Like application to me, yeah, there needs to be application of my faith, and I need to get things from the church that have application to my life. And so I wonder if maybe that for one of the things that, like, millennials, the next generation, if we don't see liturgy come back, if we don't see,
And it has in certain denominations.
mm-hmm.
I read an article. This was a few years ago because I was still working at the church. And there was an article that saying a lot of people that were my age, this was probably back when I was like 25, 26, were going back to the Catholic Church or to the more liturgical Protestant denominations, like Episcopalian, Catholic Light, as Robin Williams called it, because they enjoyed and they felt the benefits of the liturgy, the recitation, the rigidity is totally not the word I'm looking for. The
structure?
Yes, the structure that it provides. Because I think a lot of people that are my age grew up in everyone that's my age grew up in the 90s, Dave. Not just some of us. All of us did.
That's crazy.
But it was such a change in church culture in America. Willow Creek happened, became a thing. And then you had, so it was like the decade of the mega churches. Saddleback, and then, like, even in my own church growing up, we went from being called Ebenezer Baptist Church with a German-speaking service to Grace Community Church, no longer Baptist, but, feel-good community wannabe megachurch, essentially. And I don't think that they were wrong in their decisions for switching, but I think that was indicative of the times of what church was. And it was so warm and fuzzy and like pie in the sky theory stuff. We sing fun songs with an electronic drum kit, because we're cool and we're hip and we want to be relevant. But I understand why people my age are seeking that sort of structure and that sort of tie to the ancientness of our faith, right? That brings us back to how things used to be before lights and smoke machines and concerts for worship took over. There's something appealing about that, because when I go to a church nowadays, I don't necessarily feel like, based on what I see and what I experience, that Christianity's been around for over 2,000 years. Everything is so modern and so slick, and yeah, it doesn't feel ancient or mysterious or appealing in a way that reciting a creed from 1,500 years ago. It's like, oh man, people have been saying this for a really, really long time. I am now connecting with something that people over a millennium have been saying and affirming about God. Like, that's powerful.
Yeah.
I feel like I default to church bashing, and that's not what I'm going to say what people say. I listen to a lot of nerd tech podcasts, and some of them are Apple focused, and they often say the reason we're so hard on Apple is because we love what they make and we love how their products make us feel. And when they don't deliver, we have strong opinions on it because it's something that we truly care about. We're not just being jerks. And I feel like if I'm ever church bashing on the show, it's not because I hate the church. It's because I love the church and what it stands for, and I want to see it be better.
Mm-hmm.
It's said out of a desire to see the church be what God intended it to be, and not what Bill Hybels thinks it should be. Nothing against Bill. I went to a Global Leadership Summit last year. Great teacher, man of God, but I feel like it's missing for me, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I don't know where that all came from, Dave. Hopefully it made sense.
Yes.
Gotta keep remembering to breathe too. I get all excited and I stop blinking. And all right, anything else?
No.
All right.
I'm gonna stop talking.
I think we've officially run this one into the ground. Listeners, thank you so much for listening to episode 76 of the Masterclass. We still think, we've done 76 of these now, and I don't know about you, I still think it's really cool that people listen. Like, that just is cool to me, and I appreciate it. And I know Dave does too. If you want to share your thoughts with us, we'd love to hear, especially about this whole church liturgy, like the thoughts we had on the physical. I can't even. I want to know what you think.
Yeah,
and so does Dave.
Yeah, and gosh, I'm not going to go too far down this, but I know I was kind of brought up in the church tradition of you pray the prayer, you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and boom, you're saved, you're a Christian. And just sort of this element of, well, you prayed the prayer, you're a Christian. That is what I guess what I'm sort of wrestling with. And I'm curious as to what is your definition of Christian? What evidence is there? What is the quote unquote fruit that proves? I don't know if that's the word I want to use, but what's the fruit that demonstrates that you're a Christian? And I'm curious as to what other people think that would be, and have others wrestled with that thought of this is what it means to be a Christian. So
yeah, we look forward to hearing your thoughts. And in order to share your thoughts with us, you can. This one might require an email. So
yes.
We'll say that one first. It's hello@supermegacorp.net. And then if you want to talk to Dave or I on Twitter, you can do so. Dave is at 108HBO, or H the only number, and I'm at Cam Brennan, CAMBRENNAN. I always forget how much N's I have in my name. That's a lot, considering that my first name is actually Cameron. There's an N there too.
It's crazy.
Yep, bet you really wanted to know that, didn't you? Okay, we're gonna sign off now. Bye.